What are we going to talk about today? I decided to share how I feel about the palette that I used this week. It is the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. I am shopping my stash, so basically using stuff that I have already rather than purchasing new things. But here's the thing. I keep purchasing new things, but I'm still trying to shop my stash. So I got one part of it, one part of it right. The other part, the like chill out on purchasing new eyeshadow palettes, like I haven't quite grasped that fully, completely, but it's okay. So the Mercury Retrograde palette is one that I don't use as often. I actually did not purchase it when it first came out. I got it on sale, I think last year. Because everyone has spoken so highly about it. It has pastels. I don't really have any other pastels in my collection that I can think of. And so here is the palette. It has a lot of purples and pinks and blues and golds, which is sort of right up my alley typically. But what I have found out in terms of using every shade in this palette this week is that it's not my favorite. It's not one of my favorites. The main reason that it's not one of my favorites is that I found the shimmers to be a bit harder to work with. I noticed that whenever I would put the shimmer color on my eye or the shade on my eye, I would get a lot of fallout to the point where I was getting really frustrated because I would have to clean up the my under eye area afterward. And for some reason, I didn't think to put the shadow shields under my eyes. I was just so frustrated each time I tried to use the shimmers that I became just like, I didn't even really like the look when I was done because I was so irritated. Now, I do really love the colors of the shimmers. I love the colors a lot more of the shimmers than I do the mattes. I think the mattes are just a touch too light for my skin tone. Let's see if I can point these out, but there's this really like pale color here. It's almost like a bone color or like an eggshelly off-white. At least that's the way it shows up on me. And then this color here, Crash, right here, it's another kind of light color that shows up a bit ashy on me. And then the pastels like Libra, which is this pale purple, and even this blue over here that is haze, they just don't have, I think, enough depth on my skin tone to really make the colors pop. I felt like a lot of times they just looked pretty ashy. What colors I did really like in this palette are the deeper ones, which are Hot Mess and Vortex. I used Vortex a lot to deepen up the crease on a lot of my looks. Even though it's sort of this plummy purple color, it's almost like a grayish undertone in a way, but this really just helped blend all of the colors and give some depth so that everything wasn't too ashy and bright. I did manage to use all of the shades in the palette throughout the week, and I will be sure to put some pictures up so that you can see those. The first day I started with some purple, with more of a purple look using using Libra and Ultraviolet and Hot Mess and Vortex. And I really liked it. It was just sort of a simple thing for me. And then the next day, Tuesday, I believe I did more of a peachy pink look. So I used Utopia as a base, and then I put Cosmic over that, and I used Off Balance to kind of blend out the crease area. And I believe I also put Galaxy, which is this gold shimmer, just as a topper. The next day, I then went to a more of sort of like a tannish peachy color going on. So I ended up using Momentum, which is this pale color I talked about a bit ago, and I use Frazzled, which has become my favorite shimmer. I use that all over the lid. I also used Gold Glitch on top of that, and I blended things out with Crash and Nebula. So I was just trying to use a lot more of the colors that were kind of in the middle of the palette. And then the last day, I again started with Momentum. It's funny that I'm like, I don't like that color, and I used it a lot, but I used it primarily to set my eyeshadow base that I was using. But that day I went in with this really pretty blue Mercury, and then on top of that I did Nebula, which is sort of this purple blue color here, and I blended things out with Haze, and in the inner corner I used this really pretty white, what's that one called? Supermoon. So I think that was everything. I was really just like, let me try to use all of them. Again, Frazzled has become my favorite, as well as Vortex and Hot Mess, but I would say Frazzled and Vortex are the two that I definitely know that I will keep using. I even have Frazzled on the lid today. I have that. I actually used my finger to initially put it on over an eyeshadow base, and then I went in with a brush, tapped the brush off, and kind of smooth everything out. And for the deeper colors, I used the new Hindash palette as a companion palette. I used this red ombre Love Kills, as well as Intrafatum, which is sort of the deeper kind of grungy ombre here. So the decision is that I will keep the Huda Mercury Retrograde for a little bit longer. I want to see if I can get more use out of it. Like I said, I really do like some of the shimmers. I think I just have to be in the mood for the shimmers. And this week I wasn't in the mood for it. So like every time I wore it, I was irritated. Although I think the looks came out okay. And one thing as well is that the eye looks lasted for 8 to 9 hours. It lasted my kind of whole work day. Of course, I'm still working from home, so it did not include commuting, and traffic can sometimes just make everything melt off your face. But it did last. They did last all day, and were pretty easy to remove. But even at the end of the day, removing it with the different ways that I removed my makeup, I still felt like it was just like glitter particles everywhere. And especially if you have contacts, that is not the business. So yeah, I'm gonna keep using it maybe for a little bit longer, but I have a little cousin who is like, I guess she's not little, she's like a teenager, who's really getting into makeup, and I think is at that stage where she really likes the bright pastel-y colors, and so I might just go ahead and shoot this over to her. Yeah, I do have all of the other Huda Beauty palettes, all of which I have used a lot more than Mercury Retrograde. The one that is probably like next in line in terms of which ones I don't use as much is the new Nude, just because again, those colors are really light, really kind of pale and not as pigmented on my skin, but there are a lot of pinks in there that I really like to use, so I probably use that one more than I use the Mercury Retrograde one. And for these two, really, they are companion palettes for me. So I am unsure of what palette I will be using next week. Usually I try to focus on one or a couple palettes for the most of the week, and then on Fridays I like to just do whatever I want to. So hope you enjoyed that, and stay tuned for whatever I choose next.